The devil put Charlie Dodson in this box.
Mr. Mason, it's hard to believe that you're the right person for the job.
I'm the only person for this job.
Blessed be the man who will gather evidence against the devil.
You're saying the police are involved?
The cops, the church, everybody.
HBO and Robert Downey Jr. give us a new dark and gritty series called Perry Mason, and we're going to talk about it. I'm your host, Hyde. This is Hide and Seek Media. Hello, all you beautiful and amazing people. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to the show. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, so you get notified anytime I drop a new video. If you're already subscribed here on YouTube, make sure you head on over to Rumble and subscribe over there as well. YouTube has some censorship rules that I don't like to abide by, so for videos that I cannot put up here on YouTube, head on over to Rumble and check those out. And if you like all that content and you want more, head on over to Locals and become a member. With your membership, not only will you get all access to all those videos on YouTube and Rumble, but you'll get exclusive content that I make only for Locals and direct access to me. So head on over to Locals and become a member. But today I want to do a review on HBO's series, Perry Mason. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Perry Mason, this is a character created by Earl Stanley Garner in the 20s or 30s, and then subsequently had some movies and TV shows and TV series done about him throughout the years. Most notably, Raymond Burr played the character for about 40 years on TV in the 50s and 60s, and then again in the 90s for a short time. Now, Perry Mason, for everybody who's ever seen it on TV, like myself, this was the guy that you went to when you were in trouble and you had to be saved, right? And there was nobody else to turn to. And Perry Mason was the guy that was going to get you off. If you were wrongfully accused of a crime, Perry Mason was going to figure out who it was and solve the crime, right? This was the whole premise of the TV show. But outside of that, outside of the courtroom and the, little bit of sleuthing that Perry Mason does throughout the TV shows, you don't really know much more about the character. And so what HBO and Robert Downey Jr., who's the executive producer and owns the rights to the series, what they did here was they started off with an origin story in season 1 of Perry Mason, how he becomes that defense attorney that everybody wants to represent them when they have been wrongfully accused of a crime, right? So what's interesting is their take on this whole premise, right? So building an origin story for a character who does not have one at all, because even in the books that Earl Stanley Garner wrote, there is no real origin story of where Perry Mason comes from and how he became the lawyer that he is, right? And so that's the avenue that HBO takes here. And I think it is fantastic. What I love about it is that it's set in the 1930s, in the Depression era. I think 1932 is the exact year that the case is being tried. And Perry Mason isn't the lawyer. Right? In this series, he is the private investigator who works for the attorney who has taken on the big case that needs to be solved, right? Because somebody's been wrongfully accused of a crime. Now, that person happens to be the father of a kidnapped infant son who was ransomed and subsequently killed before the baby could be exchanged. And when the parents get the kid back, this movie, when I say this show is gritty, dark, gruesome at times, it starts off that way. And it can be startling if you're not ready for it. What I like about the way they did this and the way the story unfolds, and yes, it is a little slow in the beginning. But you have to set up all the characters and get everybody's story in place so that you can follow them along throughout the series, right? So those first few episodes are always kind of slow in these kinds of series. But if your interest in Perry Mason, in his origin story, like if you've ever seen the old TV shows, then you're definitely going to have an interest in how they decided to do this origin story, which is fantastic in my opinion. I thoroughly enjoyed season 1. There were some times where the story kind of goes awry, and you really have to be following along to figure it out in a certain point. But it does come back together, and they kind of lay it all out for you in the end. So, but what's really great in this season was watching the maturation of Perry Mason's character. Watch him go from that just mess of a man that just likes to drink and usually getting in cases way over his head and not thinking of the situation, thinking it out thoroughly or acting in the best interest of himself. And so Perry Mason is played by Matthew Rhys. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce his last name. I think it's Matthew Rhys or Matthew Rhys. But he was from The Americans. He played Philip Jennings in The Americans, and he was fantastic in that show. And that is another TV show that is absolutely amazing. If you want to go watch something about the Cold War and Russian spies and living in America, it's fantastic. Go watch that. I definitely recommend that. But Matthew Rhys is absolutely brilliant in this role. I think Robert Downey Jr. did this show a great service when he bowed out and allowed Matthew to step into this role and take it on, because I couldn't have seen Robert Downey Jr. play Perry Mason as a private detective in the 30s, down on his luck, and I don't see that. I see Robert Downey Jr. as Sherlock Holmes, and it's hard to kind of look away, take that out of the detective part, right? So, but you can see how his character relies on justice and truth, and that starts to really shape and mold this case, and his viewpoint helps shape and mold who he becomes. And along with the help of his mentor and the lawyer he works for, E.B. Jonathan, who is played by John Lithgow, another great performance. And this first season has a slew of famous people that you would recognize, and it is they all do a fantastic job. I loved every single performance from these people. Like this, I know that this show got a lot of bad reviews, and okay, I get that some people didn't like how slow it took, but I enjoyed it. I very thoroughly enjoyed the show. The story was, like I said, it was a little hard to follow at times. They kind of muddled the story a little bit, but beyond that, the time period, the 1930s, it was fantastic. Everyone using matches and payphones and these rinky-dink looking freaking cameras and no technology, really. I mean, it was fantastic. And the whole story is littered with corruption and betrayal and suicide and resurrection and kidnapping and murder. And I mean, you get a host of excitement throughout the entire series. And like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed the show. I would recommend that if you like detective shows and you are a fan of Perry Mason from the old days, or if you've watched any of those shows and you're a fan of the Perry Mason from then, you would really enjoy this origin story, because it shows that the Perry Mason that we got in the 50s and 60s and in the 90s, he didn't get that brilliant in court by going to law school and learning every law there is to know. He got that brilliant from the streets and being able to understand people and decipher truth through all the bullshit, right? That's where Perry Mason's true superpowers are, right? And it wasn't that he knew the law, so magnificently, and that he was just a brilliant student of the law. That wasn't Perry Mason. Perry Mason was a detective in a lawyer's suit, right? And that's exactly how they made him. That's exactly how that's why this origin story fits so well with the Perry Mason that we get from Earl Stanley Gardner and from the 50s and 60s from Raymond Burr. Now, there are other shows that have chosen this time frame, but I think the way this was filmed, the way that this was shot, the lighting that they used, the camera angles, and the editing was phenomenal. I thought this was a very, very well put together show. And like I said, I highly recommend it. I would highly recommend you going and watch this. There are other aspects to the story that I'm really not going to get into. There's a religious aspect to it, and a church and all of that kind of goes along with the story a little bit, but it seems a little forced if I'm being honest, and so that's why I really didn't dwell on it too much here. For me, it was the story itself and the way the actors portrayed that story and the performances they gave. I think they were magnificent. This was, if I'm going on a scale of 0 to 10, this has got to be in the 8 range for me. 8.1, 8.4, between 8.1 and 8.4. If this is what you're into, the dark and gritty detective type shows, then I definitely recommend this. It was very, very well done. But I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think. Have you watched the show? Have you seen season 1? Have you seen season 2? Because I'm about to watch it, and we're going to do another review on that coming up shortly. So let me know what you think down in the comments. I appreciate you guys watching all the way to the end. It really does mean a lot that you've made it this far. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, so you get notified anytime I drop a new video. Subscribe on Rumble. If you like all the content you get here, head on over to Locals and become a member. Smash that like button. Leave a comment. Share this video on all social media platforms. All those interactions help the algorithm give this video impressions, which is how we get more eyeballs, and that's how we get more subscribers. I appreciate everything you guys are doing, and I'll catch you later. Peace.